Please stay calm and keep your distance.
Something isn't right. Pay attention.
My daughter's heart had stopped. I was doing chest compressions on a 2-year-old on the sidewalk, counting out loud, begging her to breathe. And 30 feet away, the man who'd just tased her, wearing a tactical vest with an HOA badge, was radioing his wife. Subject resisted compliance with enforcement directive. Deployed less lethal force as necessary. I'm an assistant district attorney. I prosecute violent crimes. The moment his taser touched my daughter, Derek Bradford committed aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. If you've ever watched someone hurt your child while justifying it as enforcement, you'll understand. So, hit subscribe now. I'm Connor Hayes. I've sent people to prison for 20 years for less than what Derek just did. I know use of force law. I know when defensive action becomes criminal assault. And I know exactly what happens to people who deploy tasers on 2-year-olds. But I also know that Michelle Bradford, Derek's wife, the HOA president, has city council connections, that the DA's office might hesitate to prosecute, that I'd need more than just a criminal case. I'd need the kind of public pressure that makes cover-ups impossible, and I knew exactly how to create it. The pink and purple chalk scattered around Emma's unconscious body. My wife Melissa bought it 3 days before the emergency C-section that killed her. Emma was all I had left of Melissa, the only piece of her that survived that hospital room 2 years ago. Now Emma's heart wasn't beating because an HOA enforcer tased her for not surrendering her mother's chalk. I kept counting compressions. 30, 2 rescue breaths, watching Emma's tiny chest, willing it to rise on its own. 1, 2, 3, breathe, Emma, breathe. 4, 5, 6. Her eyes opened. A gasp. Then screaming. The most beautiful sound I'd ever heard because it meant her heart was working again. Paramedics arrived seconds later. Derek stood there explaining into his radio like this was normal, like tasing a toddler over sidewalk chalk was reasonable enforcement. What happened? The lead paramedic knelt beside Emma. He tased her. I kept my hand on Emma's chest, feeling her heartbeat, still there, still fighting. She's 2 years old, and he deployed a taser because she wouldn't give him her chalk. The paramedic looked at Derek, at the taser visible on his belt, at the tactical vest. Your HOA security? Community safety director, Derek said. The child was violating community ordinances. When the father interfered with enforcement, the situation escalated. I used appropriate less lethal force to secure compliance. Less lethal force on a 2-year-old. I watched them load Emma into the ambulance. She was crying for me, reaching with small hands, the pink chalk dust still on her fingers. I'm coming, baby. Daddy's coming. As the ambulance pulled away, Derek approached me, still wearing that tactical vest, still carrying the taser that had stopped my daughter's heart. Mr. Hayes, I'll need you to sign this incident report acknowledging the violation and the enforcement action taken. He held out a clipboard. I looked at him, at the fake badge, at the tactical gear purchased online by a man who'd failed the police academy, at the taser he'd deployed on a child. You're going to prison, Derek. I acted within my authority as community safety director. You committed aggravated assault with a deadly weapon on a minor under the age of 6. That's a Class 2 felony in Arizona, 15 to 25 years. My prosecutor voice was ice cold, controlled. You stopped my daughter's heart. I had to perform CPR to save her life. And you're standing here with a clipboard. Derek's confidence flickered. Michelle, my wife, the HOA president. She'll explain that our security protocols. Your wife enabled this. You're both going down. I walked to my car to follow the ambulance, pulled out my phone, started documenting everything while it was fresh. Because Michelle Bradford had city council friends. Because the DA might hesitate. Because I'd need more than just a criminal complaint. I'd need witnesses, media coverage, public outrage so loud that political connections couldn't protect them. The board chair thought her husband's tactical vest and fake authority made him legitimate. Thought HOA enforcement could include deploying weapons on children. She had no idea I'd spent 8 years prosecuting violent crimes, that I knew how to build cases that couldn't be buried, that when institutional justice fails, public justice takes over. And she definitely didn't know my father wrote the use of force manual every Arizona cop studies. But she was about to find out what happens when you tase a prosecutor's daughter. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez met us in the pediatric emergency room. Her expression when she saw Emma's chart made my stomach drop. Your daughter suffered cardiac arrest from electrical shock. We need to run full cardiac workup, EKG, echocardiogram, troponin levels to check for heart damage. She examined Emma gently while nurses attached monitors. Mr. Hayes, what caused the electrical injury? HOA security tased her. She's 2 years old. Dr. Rodriguez stopped, looked at me. Someone deployed a taser on a 2-year-old child? Over sidewalk chalk, he claimed she was resisting compliance. There's no scenario where tasing a toddler is medically or legally justifiable. The cardiac arrest alone could have killed her. We're looking at potential permanent heart damage, neurological injury from oxygen deprivation. She pulled out her tablet, started documenting. I'm required to report this to Child Protective Services. This is assault with a weapon on a child. Emma was crying, reaching for me. Daddy, scared. I know, baby. The doctors are helping you. You're safe now. But she wasn't safe. Her heart had stopped. The monitors showed irregular rhythms. Dr. Rodriguez was watching closely. My daughter, the only piece of Melissa I had left, was fighting cardiac injury because an HOA enforcer thought sidewalk chalk justified deadly force. While Dr. Rodriguez ran tests, I called Detective Sarah Morrison, filed an official police report for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Mr. Hayes, I know you're a prosecutor, but I have to ask, are you certain about the taser deployment? HOA security using that level of force on a child? I watched it happen. I have the medical records documenting cardiac arrest from electrical shock. Multiple witnesses saw it, and I'm betting there's security camera footage from neighboring homes. I'll open an investigation, but Connor, Sarah's voice dropped. Michelle Bradford has connections, city council, the mayor's office. This might get complicated. That's what I'd been afraid of. The board chair's political relationships, creating pressure to downplay, delay, maybe bury the whole thing. Sarah, my daughter's heart stopped. I had to do CPR on a 2-year-old. If this gets complicated because of politics, I'm not saying we won't investigate. I'm saying be prepared for resistance. 3 hours later, while Emma slept fitfully in her hospital bed, my phone buzzed. Email from Michelle Bradford to all Riverside Meadows residents. Community safety incident. This afternoon, Community Safety Director Derek Bradford responded to a violation of community ordinances, unauthorized markings on common area walkways. During enforcement action, a resident became confrontational and physically aggressive, creating a dangerous situation. Director Bradford used appropriate defensive force to protect himself and maintain community safety. The resident's minor child was inadvertently affected during the altercation. We stand behind Director Bradford's professional conduct and commitment to keeping Riverside Meadows secure. I read it twice. Felt prosecutor rage crystallize into strategy. Riverside Meadows enforcer had just created a documented lie. Inadvertently affected meant my daughter's cardiac arrest. Appropriate defensive force meant tasing a 2-year-old. Professional conduct meant a failed cop with tactical gear and a weapon he had no legal authority to carry. This wasn't just a cover-up. This was Michelle doubling down, defending Derek, lying to 420 families about what happened. I forwarded the email to Detective Morrison with one line: documented false statement, witness intimidation, add to investigation. Then I started making a list. Every family in Riverside Meadows who'd experienced Derek's enforcement. Every incident Michelle had covered up. Every time her husband's tactical gear and fake authority had escalated into confrontation. Because I'd prosecuted enough violent offenders to know this wasn't Derek's first incident. Michelle's email had the smooth confidence of someone who'd defended him before. Emma stirred in her hospital bed. "Daddy, where's my chalk?" "Derek took it, baby. Want mommy's chalk back." Melissa's last gift to our daughter, confiscated as evidence of an HOA violation. My wife had died giving birth to Emma, and now the chalk she'd bought, the pink and purple colors she'd chosen while pregnant, hoping for a little girl, was in Derek Bradford's possession. Dr. Rodriguez returned with test results. Cardiac enzymes are elevated. She has myocardial injury from the electrical shock. We're keeping her for observation. Any chest pain, difficulty breathing, irregular heartbeat, we need to monitor closely. Long-term effects? Too early to say. But Mr. Hayes, cardiac arrest in a 2-year-old from a taser? That's potentially lethal force. Whoever did this needs to face consequences. I looked at my daughter hooked up to heart monitors because an HOA enforcer thought chalk justified a weapon. The tyrant in heels had sent an email defending it, had connections that might slow the investigation, had political protection that could prevent justice. But she'd never faced someone who knew how to make sure the whole world was watching. 2 days after Emma came home from the hospital, Robert Chen showed up at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched, hands fidgeting with his car keys. "Mr. Hayes, can we talk privately?" I led him to my living room. He sat on the edge of the couch, then stood up, walked to the window, sat back down. His hands kept moving, adjusting his glasses, smoothing his shirt, gripping his knees like he needed something to hold on to. "I saw what happened to your daughter." His voice was barely audible. "My house is across the street. I have security cameras. They captured everything. The entire incident. Yes, Derek confronting Emma, taking her chalk, your daughter trying to hold on to it, Derek deploying the taser." Robert's hands started trembling. "You doing CPR? Her not breathing? I watched from my window, and I should have done something, should have helped, but I just stood there." He looked at me with guilt written across every line of his face. "I have 3 grandchildren. 2 of them are Emma's age. And I watched a man tase a 2-year-old, and I did nothing. Why are you telling me this now?" Robert stood again, walked back to the window. His reflection showed someone at war with himself. "Because I can't sleep, can't look at my grandkids without seeing your daughter on that sidewalk. But Mr. Hayes," he turned to face me, "if I give you that footage, Michelle will destroy me." "What do you mean?" "She's already threatening me with violations. My solar panels, I installed them last year. Michelle says they violate aesthetic guidelines, even though they're identical to 3 other houses in the community. She's fined me $10,000. Says she'll put a lien on my house if I don't remove them by next month." His jaw worked. hands clenching into fists at his sides. I'm retired, fixed income. That $10,000 is my emergency fund. The panels cost $30,000 to install. Removing them and losing that investment, he trailed off, I'd be financially ruined. So, Michelle is using HOA violations to keep you quiet. She sent me a personal email the day after the incident, said she understood I had concerns about recent enforcement actions, but that the board values cooperative residents who understand the importance of community standards. Robert's voice went bitter. Then she attached an updated violation notice adding interest charges to the solar panel fine. That's witness intimidation. I know what it is, but if I come forward with the footage, she'll escalate. She'll find every possible violation on my property. She'll make my life hell until I'm forced to sell and leave. He sat down again, put his head in his hands. And I hate myself for it, for choosing my money over justice for your daughter. Robert, the footage shows everything. Derek wasn't threatened. Emma wasn't aggressive. She was a toddler holding chalk, and he tased her anyway. Robert looked up at me. Broken. There's something else you need to know. This isn't the first time Derek has used force during enforcement. My prosecutor instincts sharpened. What do you mean? Last summer, the Martinelli family's teenage son was skateboarding in the community park after hours. Derek tackled him. The kid hit his head on the pavement, needed stitches. Michelle paid the family $5,000 to stay quiet, called it settlement of property damage claim. Derek assaulted a teenager, and 6 months before that, he shoved an elderly man during an argument about parking violations. The man fell, bruised his hip. Michelle threatened him with eviction if he reported it. Robert's hands were shaking so badly, he clasped them together. She's been covering for Derek's violence for over a year, paying people off, threatening them, making sure nothing gets reported officially. Why hasn't anyone gone to the police? Because the board chair has city council connections. Because people are afraid of retaliation. Because Michelle makes it clear that crossing her means financial ruin. He met my eyes. Mr. Hayes, I want to help. I want to give you that footage. I want Derek to face consequences for what he did to Emma. But I have a wife, grandkids who visit, a home I can't afford to lose. The footage is on your security system. Saved to local storage and cloud backup. Date stamped, high definition. It shows exactly what happened. That Derek tased a 2-year-old who was no threat to anyone. His voice cracked. But if I turn it over, I lose everything. I looked at this man torn between conscience and survival, between protecting a child and protecting himself. Robert, give me a few days. I'm working on something that'll make it safer for witnesses to come forward. Something that'll make Michelle's retaliation impossible. What? Public pressure. The kind that makes cover-ups and intimidation backfire. I stood. When the whole world is watching, Michelle can't threaten you without exposing herself. He looked at me with desperate hope. You can do that? I'm a prosecutor. I know how to build cases people can't ignore. Detective Morrison called 3 days after I filed the police report. Her tone told me everything before she spoke. Connor, we've interviewed Derek Bradford. He's claiming self-defense, says you were aggressive, that Emma was in the middle of a confrontational situation, that he felt threatened. He tased a 2-year-old over sidewalk chalk. I know, I believe you, but his attorney is already creating alternative narratives. And, Connor, she paused. I got a call from the chief's office. Michelle Bradford's connections are making noise, city council members asking about proportionate response to HOA enforcement incidents, the mayor's assistant requesting briefings on the investigation. My prosecutor instincts recognized political interference immediately. They're trying to slow this down. They're trying to make it go away. I'm still investigating, but I wanted you to know what we're facing. After we hung up, I drove to the HOA office. Found Michelle Bradford at her desk, reviewing what looked like violation notices with the satisfied expression of someone maintaining order. Mr. Hayes, if you're here about the incident report Derek filed, Derek tased my daughter. She went into cardiac arrest. I had to perform CPR to save her life. Your daughter was involved in an enforcement situation that escalated due to your interference. Derek used appropriate defensive measures when he felt threatened by your aggressive behavior. The former HR director's voice was clinical, professional. The board has reviewed the incident and determined Derek acted within his authority as community safety director. He has no authority. He's not a cop. He failed the police academy. He's an HOA-appointed security official with enforcement responsibilities clearly outlined in his position description. Michelle pulled out a document. Community safety director duties include maintaining order, addressing violations, using necessary measures to ensure compliance with community standards. Necessary measures don't include tasers on toddlers. Derek's assessment of the threat level and appropriate response is supported by the board. We stand behind his professional judgment. She slid another paper across her desk. Now, about the original violation. Unauthorized markings on common area walkways. The fine is $500. Payment is due within 15 days, or we'll proceed with lien filing. You're billing me for the violation that led to Derek tasing my daughter? The violation occurred regardless of subsequent events. HOA covenants require compliance and payment of associated fines. Riverside Meadows enforcer's expression didn't change. Additionally, your daughter is banned from all HOA common areas pending behavioral assessment. We can't have children who resist authority creating safety issues. She's 2 years old. Age doesn't excuse non-compliance with security directives. The ban remains until we receive documentation from a child psychologist confirming she won't engage in similar confrontational behavior. I stared at her. At the woman who defended her husband tasing a toddler, who was now demanding behavioral assessment for a 2-year-old who'd wanted to keep her dead mother's chalk. Michelle, I'm an assistant district attorney. I know aggravated assault when I see it. Derek's going to prison. Derek acted in self-defense during a volatile situation you created. Our attorney has already prepared a comprehensive defense. The board chair stood, walked to her office window overlooking the community. Mr. Hayes, I understand you're upset, but threatening legal action against HOA security personnel won't change the fact that violations must be addressed, pay the fine, get the behavioral assessment, move forward. Or what? Or face escalating consequences, daily fines, liens, legal action to enforce compliance. She turned back to me. I've been HOA president for 4 years. I've dealt with dozens of residents who thought they could ignore rules. They all eventually complied. You will too. I left her office and went home to find another email blast to all residents. Continued security concerns. Some residents continue to spread misinformation about community safety operations. Director Bradford's professional conduct during a recent enforcement incident has been fully reviewed and supported by the board. Residents who feel threatened by proper security procedures may be experiencing difficulty adapting to community standards. We encourage such residents to seek counseling or consider whether Riverside Meadows is the right fit for their family. She was gaslighting the entire community, suggesting that being upset about a tased toddler meant you needed counseling or should leave. My phone rang. My supervisor at the DA's office. "Connor, I heard about your daughter. I'm so sorry, but I need to talk to you about the Bradford investigation." "Don't tell me." The DA received calls from 3 city council members. They're concerned about overzealous prosecution of HOA security personnel. They're asking us to carefully consider whether criminal charges are warranted or if this is a civil HOA matter. A 2-year-old went into cardiac arrest from a taser deployment. I know, but Connor, Michelle Bradford has serious political capital. If we prosecute and she fights back through her connections, he sighed. I'm not saying we won't pursue it. I'm saying be prepared for a long, complicated process. I hung up and looked at Emma sleeping on the couch, still recovering, still having nightmares about the man in the tactical vest. The tyrant in heels had political protection, had an attorney building Derek's defense, had connections pressuring the DA's office to back down. Traditional prosecution was being blocked before it started. I needed a different strategy, one that political connections couldn't stop, one that made cover-ups impossible. I needed to make sure the whole world was watching. I sat in my DA's office the next morning, staring at the file I'd built on Derek Bradford. Medical records documenting Emma's cardiac arrest, witness statements, photos of the chalk scattered on the sidewalk, the taser deployment timeline, everything needed for an airtight aggravated assault prosecution. My supervisor, Tom, walked in, closed the door, and sat across from my desk with the expression I'd seen 100 times when cases got politically complicated. "Connor, the DA met with City Council leadership yesterday. Michelle Bradford's attorney was there. They're presenting this as an HOA governance issue being criminalized by an overreaching prosecutor who happens to be personally involved." My daughter's heart stopped. I know, but they're framing it as HOA security responded to a violation. Resident became confrontational. Security used force he believed was appropriate. Child was inadvertently injured. They're pushing civil liability, not criminal prosecution. "Tom, Derek tased a 2-year-old. That's not civil. That's felony assault." The DA agrees, privately, but Connor, he pulled out his tablet, showed me an email chain. 3 city council members, the mayor's chief of staff, 2 prominent attorneys threatening federal civil rights lawsuit if we prosecute. Michelle's connections are building a wall around Derek. I read the emails, recognized the political pressure I'd seen derail cases before. Connections leveraged, threats made, justice delayed until everyone forgot or gave up. So we're not filing charges? I'm saying it'll take months, maybe years. We'll need to overcome political pressure, fight off civil rights claims, navigate the HOA's attorney creating reasonable doubt. Tom looked at me with sympathy. And Connor, you're the victim's father. Defense will claim bias. They'll demand you recuse from all involvement. The case will go to someone else who doesn't have your expertise or motivation. I sat back, felt prosecutor frustration crystallize into recognition. Traditional prosecution was going to fail, not because we lacked evidence. We had overwhelming evidence, but because Riverside Meadows' enforcer had political protection that could delay and obstruct until public attention faded. That's when it hit me. Public attention. I'd prosecuted high-profile cases, worked with media on press conferences. understood how public outrage could force action when institutions hesitated. I'd seen cases that should have been buried become unavoidable because the whole city was watching. Michelle had political connections, but those connections only worked in darkness, in closed-door meetings and quiet pressure. What if I made it impossible for this to stay quiet? Tom, how many cases have we prosecuted where media coverage made dismissal impossible? He understood immediately. Connor, going public with your daughter's case, that's risky. You're a prosecutor. There are rules about. I'm also a father whose daughter was tased. I have First Amendment rights. And if Michelle's connections are going to block traditional prosecution, I'll create public pressure that makes blocking it political suicide. The DA won't like you weaponizing media. The DA won't like national coverage asking why he's protecting an HOA enforcer who tased a toddler. I pulled out my phone, started making a list. I know reporters from every major case I've worked. I know how to frame stories for maximum impact. I know what makes cases go viral. This could backfire. Michelle's attorney will claim you're trying to poison the jury pool. Let them claim it. I'll have documentation, medical records, witness statements, video, footage once I get it. The board chair can argue jurisdiction all she wants, but when 2 million people watch a video of a 2-year-old going into cardiac arrest after being tased over chalk, political connections won't save her husband. Tom was quiet. Then, "You're really going to do this? I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened. That Michelle Bradford enabled her husband to patrol our neighborhood with a taser. That Derek deployed it on a toddler. That my daughter's heart stopped. That I had to perform CPR on a 2-year-old while the man who hurt her stood there with a clipboard. You're a prosecutor, Connor, using media pressure to force charges. I'm a father first. And when the system that's supposed to deliver justice gets blocked by political pressure, you go around it." I stood up. Michelle thinks her city council friends will protect her. She has no idea what happens when this becomes a national story. I left the DA's office knowing traditional prosecution would take too long, would give Michelle time to intimidate witnesses, pay off victims, create enough legal complications to stall everything. But public exposure worked fast. Viral videos couldn't be buried. National outrage couldn't be managed by city council connections. The former HR director had built political walls to protect Derek. I was about to show her that walls don't stop cameras, don't stop social media, don't stop millions of people demanding justice when they watch a toddler's heart stop. That night, Emma had her first seizure. I heard the sound from her bedroom, a strange gasping, limbs jerking. Ran in to find my daughter convulsing, eyes rolled back, tiny body shaking uncontrollably. "Emma, baby, I'm here. Daddy's here." I called 911. Held her on her side like the paramedics had taught me during her first hospitalization. Counted seconds that felt like hours. 45 seconds before the seizure stopped. Emma went limp in my arms, breathing, but unconscious. Ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Same paramedics who'd responded to the tasing. The lead EMT recognized us immediately. The toddler who was tased? She's having seizures now. Jesus, cardiac arrest complications? At the hospital, Dr. Rodriguez ran emergency tests, EEG showing abnormal brain activity, repeat cardiac enzyme levels still elevated, MRI revealing potential hypoxic brain injury from when her heart stopped. "Mr. Hayes, this seizure is directly related to the cardiac arrest your daughter suffered from the taser deployment." Dr. Rodriguez pulled up brain scans on her tablet. When her heart stopped, Her brain was deprived of oxygen. Even though you restarted her heart quickly, there was damage. Now we're seeing secondary effects. Seizures, potential long-term neurological complications. Will there be more seizures? Likely. We're starting anti-seizure medication, but there are no guarantees. Some children who experience cardiac arrest develop epilepsy. Some have cognitive delays. Some recover fully. It's too early to know. She sat beside Emma's hospital bed. But Connor, your daughter had a taser deployed on her. Her heart stopped. Now she's having seizures. This is catastrophic injury from a weapon used on a 2-year-old. I looked at Emma sleeping in the hospital bed. Monitors tracking her heart rhythm. IV delivering anti-seizure medication. My daughter, all I had left of Melissa, suffering ongoing damage because Derek Bradford thought chalk justified a taser. How long has it been since the incident? 5 days. And she's already having seizures. The board chair's husband caused this. And he's still patrolling your neighborhood with that taser. My phone buzzed. Another community email from Michelle Bradford. Reminder: Community Safety Director Bradford continues regular patrols ensuring neighborhood security. Residents should feel reassured by his vigilant presence, protecting property values and community standards. Recent attempts to undermine our security operations are being addressed through appropriate legal channels. Derek was still out there, still wearing tactical gear, still carrying the taser that had stopped Emma's heart, still backed by the HOA president who defended his every action. And traditional prosecution would take months while political pressure built walls. But Emma didn't have months. She had seizures now, brain damage now, trauma now. I pulled out my phone and started typing. Not a legal brief, not a police report, a social media post. 5 days ago, HOA security tased my 2-year-old daughter over sidewalk chalk. Her heart stopped. I performed CPR on a toddler while the man who hurt her claimed self-defense. Tonight, she had her first seizure, brain damage from cardiac arrest caused by a taser deployed on a child. This is Emma. This is what HOA enforcement looks like when political connections protect violence. I attached Emma's hospital photos, the medical records, the timeline, the email from Riverside Meadows enforcer defending Derek's professional conduct. Created hashtags, Justice for Emma, Chukchum Protect Our Kids, Chuch HOA Accountability, posted to every social media platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Sent the same information to every local news contact I'd worked with during high-profile prosecutions. Subject line: Prosecutor's toddler tased by HOA security suffers cardiac arrest and seizures. Sent it to national crime reporters I'd testified for as expert witness. ADA's daughter tased over chalk, heart stopped, now having seizures. HOA president with political connections blocking prosecution. Sent it to advocacy groups focused on HOA reform, child safety, police accountability. Mr. Hayes, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Your daughter's waking up. Emma's eyes opened, confused, scared. Daddy? I'm here, baby. You're safe. Had bad dream, man invest. Derek, still haunting her. Still the monster in her nightmares. He can't hurt you anymore. Emma, I promise. Want mommy's chalk back? Melissa's pink and purple chalk, confiscated as evidence. The last gift from a mother who died giving birth now in Derek Bradford's possession. My phone started buzzing. Notifications, shares, comments. The post was spreading. Oh my God, a toddler? The HOA needs to be sued into oblivion. This is what happens when you give power to people with no training. Cardiac arrest? On a 2-year-old? Someone needs prison. 500 shares in 20 minutes. 1,000. 2,000. The tyrant in heels thought political connections could contain this, thought her attorney's legal strategy would create enough doubt, thought Derek's tactical vest and fake authority looked professional enough to justify force. She had no idea what happens when a prosecutor weaponizes social media, when medical records become public evidence, when millions of people see what appropriate defensive force looks like when deployed on a child. This changed everything. My social media post hit 50,000 shares by morning. Local news stations were calling, national outlets requesting interviews. The story was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. That's when Robert Chen called. "Mr. Hayes, I saw your post. It's everywhere. And I can't stay silent anymore." We met at a coffee shop 10 miles from Riverside Meadows. Robert arrived carrying a laptop and a USB drive, looking simultaneously terrified and determined. "The footage is on here, everything, high definition, time-stamped, from 3 different camera angles." He opened the laptop. "I've been watching it over and over, trying to find some way it could be justified, some angle where Derek might have been right." He pressed play. The video was devastating. Emma on the driveway, pink and purple chalk in her small hands, drawing flowers, humming to herself the way toddlers do. Derek approaching in tactical vest, taser visible on his belt. "You need to stop. Chalk on sidewalks violates community standards." Emma looking up, confused. "I'm drawing. Surrender the chalk, now." "No, it's Mommy's." Her small voice, protective of the chalk Melissa had bought. Derek reaching for the chalk box, Emma holding onto it. "Mine. You're resisting compliance with enforcement directives." Derek's hand moving to his taser, me coming outside. "What's going on?" "Sir, this child is violating HOA ordinances and refusing to comply with security instructions. She's 2 years old. She's drawing with chalk. Confiscation of contraband is necessary." Then it happened. Emma wouldn't let go of the chalk box. Derek pulled harder. She started crying. I reached down to pick her up. Derek drew his taser. "Step back. You're interfering with official enforcement." "She's my daughter." The taser deployed. Emma's small body went rigid, fell, started convulsing. The sound of her hitting the pavement. My scream. Me dropping to my knees, starting CPR. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. "Emma, please. Breathe." Neighbors running out. Derek on his radio. "Subject resisted compliance. Deployed less lethal force as necessary." 90 seconds of CPR before Emma gasped, her eyes opening, crying. Robert stopped the video. There's no justification, none. Derek wasn't threatened. Emma wasn't aggressive. She was a toddler protecting her mother's chalk. This is what I need. This destroys any self-defense claim. There's more. Robert pulled out a folder. After your post went viral, I started asking questions, quietly, to other neighbors who've experienced Derek's enforcement. His hands weren't shaking now, steady with purpose. 3 previous incidents Michelle covered up. He opened the first file. July last year, Tony Martinelli, age 16, skateboarding in the park after posted hours. Derek tackled him onto concrete. Kid needed 8 stitches in his head. Michelle paid the family $5,000, made them sign an NDA calling it Settlement of Property Damage Claim. I found the canceled check and board financial records. Second file. January this year. Harold Peterson, 73 years old, argued with Derek about parking violation. Derek shoved him. Mr. Peterson fell, fractured his hip. Michelle threatened eviction if he reported it to police. He moved out 3 months later. Third file. March. Sarah Wu, confronted Derek about his aggressive questioning of her teenage daughter. Derek grabbed Sarah's arm hard enough to bruise. Michelle called it mutual altercation, threatened Sarah with violation notices if she filed police report. Michelle paid people off and threatened others into silence. For 18 months, creating a pattern of Derek using force during enforcement while the board chair enabled and covered for him. Your daughter wasn't his first victim. She's just the first one whose father had the resources to fight back. Robert closed the laptop. Mr. Hayes, when I saw your post this morning, 50,000 shares, news coverage, people demanding justice, I realized something. Michelle can't retaliate against me now. Not when the whole world is watching Riverside Meadows. If she tries to find me or threaten me, it'll look like witness intimidation in a viral case. The publicity protects you. Exactly. So here's everything. Security footage, documentation of the previous incidents, financial records showing Michelle's payoffs, email threads where she told board members to support Derek's security decisions without question. He pushed the USB drive across the table. Use it. Make sure everyone knows what the former HR director built here. A violent enforcement regime where her husband could assault people and she'd cover it up. I took the drive. Robert, this footage is going to end Derek's freedom and Michelle's presidency. Good, because I have grandchildren, and I watched your daughter's heart stop while I did nothing. I won't make that mistake again. After Robert left, I uploaded the security footage to social media, posted it with caption, "This is the appropriate defensive force the HOA president defended. Watch a 2-year-old get tased over chalk. Watch her heart stop. Then ask yourself if Michelle Bradford should remain in power." The video went viral in hours, 2 million views by evening, national news stations requesting permission to air it, child safety advocates sharing it everywhere. The tyrant in heels had thought she could control the narrative with emails and political connections. She didn't know that security cameras don't lie, and 2 million witnesses can't be intimidated. The security footage had 2 million views within 24 hours. Every major news network was calling. My phone didn't stop buzzing. I set up my home office as media command center, built a timeline of events with supporting documentation for every claim. Medical records, police reports, HOA emails, Robert's footage, the previous victim's files. Everything organized like a prosecution case, because that's exactly what it was, just presented to the court of public opinion instead of a jury. First call, Lisa Martinez at Channel 12 News, local investigative reporter I'd worked with on 3 high-profile criminal cases. "Connor, this footage is devastating. A toddler tased over chalk? We want to run a full investigation piece. Can you get us interviews with other victims?" I have documentation of 3 previous assaults Derek committed that Michelle covered up. Victims willing to go on camera now that there's public protection. On camera? Connor, this becomes a pattern story, not isolated incident. Systematic violence enabled by HOA leadership. Her producer voice clicked on. "This airs tomorrow night, 6-minute investigative segment. HOA Security's hidden violence, pattern of assault covered up by board president." Second call. Marcus Webb, national crime correspondent for CNN. I'd provided expert testimony for twice. "Connor, I saw your post. We're covering this nationally. But I need expert analysis. Someone who can speak to use of force standards, why tasing a toddler crosses every line. I can get you that." I didn't say who yet. Saved that reveal. Law enforcement expert, national credibility, can explain exactly why this was criminal assault, not defensive force. Get me that expert, and we run this prime time. Third call. Sarah Kim, child safety advocate whose organization had pushed for HOA reform legislation in 3 states. Mr. Hayes, your daughter's case is exactly what we've been documenting. HOAs creating enforcement roles with 0 training, 0 oversight, 0 accountability. Can we use Emma's story in our legislative push? Use everything. The more pressure on HOAs to reform, the better. I spent the next 6 hours coordinating. Media outlets, victim interviews, expert testimony arrangements, building a comprehensive public exposure campaign that Michelle's political connections couldn't stop. Because Riverside, Meadows' enforcer was trying. Her attorneys sent cease and desist letters demanding I remove defamatory content, threatened lawsuits for malicious prosecution, and interference with HOA governance. I responded with one line: truth is absolute defense to defamation. See you in court. The board chair sent another community email. Legal notice. Recent social media posts contain false and misleading information about community safety operations. Our attorney is pursuing all available remedies against individuals spreading defamatory content. Director Bradford acted appropriately during a confrontational enforcement situation. Any resident sharing or endorsing false narratives may face HOA violations for damaging community reputation. She was threatening residents for sharing the video, for demanding accountability. That email went viral too. Screenshots everywhere with commentary. HOA threatens families for sharing video of toddler being tased. Board president tries to silence witnesses with violation threats. Every attempt Michelle made to control the narrative backfired, made the story bigger, made her look worse. By evening, I had confirmation. Channel 12 investigative piece airing tomorrow. CNN national coverage scheduled. 3 previous victims doing on-camera interviews. Child safety advocates coordinating legislative response. And I had the expert testimony that would destroy any remaining defense Derek might claim. I called my father, Captain Thomas Hayes, 25 years law enforcement, commander of Phoenix SWAT team, the man who literally wrote Arizona's use of force training manual. Dad, I need your help. Professional analysis of a use of force incident. The tasing? Connor, I saw your posts. I've been waiting for you to call. His voice was tight, controlled rage. Send me everything, medical records, security footage, incident timeline. Dad, Derek's attorney is going to claim appropriate defensive force. There is no scenario in law. Enforcement where tasing a 2-year-old is appropriate. None. I've commanded SWAT for 12 years. I've reviewed thousands of use of force incidents. I've written the training manual every Arizona officer studies. He paused. And my granddaughter went into cardiac arrest because some wannabe cop with tactical gear and 0 training thought chalk justified deadly force. Will you provide expert testimony on camera? Absolutely. When? CNN tomorrow, national coverage. I'll be there, and Connor, Michelle Bradford's husband, isn't going to like what I have to say about his professional security conduct. After we hung up, I finalized the media strategy. Local investigative piece showing pattern of violence. National coverage with SWAT commander's expert analysis. Previous victims humanizing the systematic abuse. Legislative advocates calling for reform. Layer after layer of public pressure that political connections couldn't stop. Michelle had city council friends, but they couldn't control national news, couldn't suppress viral videos, couldn't intimidate witnesses when millions were watching. The former HR director thought she'd built walls around Derek, thought her attorney's threats would silence me, thought violation notices would keep residents quiet. She didn't know I'd spent 8 years building prosecution cases designed to withstand every defense. And this case, presented to the public instead of a jury, was airtight. Tomorrow, the whole country would watch a SWAT commander explain why Derek Bradford belonged in prison. And the tyrant in heels would finally understand what happens when you enable violence against children and a prosecutor decides to make sure everyone's watching. The CNN studio was packed with cameras, producers, and the energy of a story that had captured national attention. Emma's footage had hit 5 million views. Every news outlet in America was covering it. And my father was about to destroy Derek Bradford's last defense. Captain Thomas Hayes sat across from Marcus Webb in full Phoenix PD uniform. 25 years of law enforcement authority radiating from every word. Captain Hayes, you've commanded the Phoenix SWAT team for 12 years. You wrote Arizona's use of force training manual. Every officer in this state studies your protocols. Is that correct? Yes, I've also reviewed over 2,000 use of force incidents during my career. Testified as expert witness in 43 cases. I know what constitutes appropriate defensive force and what constitutes criminal assault. Marcus pulled up the security footage on the studio monitor. We're going to show our viewers what happened to 2-year-old Emma Hayes. Captain, I want your professional analysis as we watch. The footage played, Emma with her chalk, Derek approaching, the confrontation, the taser deployment, Emma convulsing, my voice doing CPR. My father watched with the same controlled expression I'd seen him use in hundreds of tactical briefings, professional, analytical, but I could see the rage beneath it. Captain Hayes, from a law enforcement perspective, was this appropriate use of force? No, absolutely not. In no scenario would any trained law enforcement officer deploy a taser on a 2-year-old child. His voice was ice. Tasers are classified as less lethal weapons, but they can be deadly, especially on vulnerable populations. Children, elderly, people with heart conditions. Every police department in America prohibits taser use on young children precisely because of cardiac arrest risk. But Derek Bradford claimed he felt threatened. A grown man wearing tactical gear and carrying weapons felt threatened by a toddler holding chalk. My father's tone carried decades of SWAT command authority. That's not threat assessment. That's either profound incompetence or deliberate assault. Based on this footage, I see zero threat. I see a child protecting something that belonged to her deceased mother. Marks leaned forward. Captain, you have a personal connection to this case. Emma Hayes is my granddaughter. That's my son performing CPR in the video because Derek Bradford's taser stopped her heart. His jaw tightened. My son, an assistant district attorney who prosecutes violent crimes. My granddaughter, a 2-year-old who lost her mother at birth and now has seizures from cardiac arrest caused by a weapon that should never have been deployed on a child. What should happen to Derek Bradford? He should face criminal prosecution for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. In Arizona, that's a Class 2 felony, 15 to 25 years in prison. My father looked directly at the camera. And the HOA president who enabled this, who defended her husband's actions, who threatened witnesses, who covered up previous assaults, she should face conspiracy charges. The interview went viral within minutes. Clips everywhere. SWAT commander. Tasing toddler is criminal assault, not self-defense. Police expert whose granddaughter was tased destroys HOA's defense. But it was my father's closing statement that hit hardest. I've spent 25 years training officers to use force appropriately. to protect the vulnerable, to understand that badges and weapons come with responsibility, not power. Derek Bradford failed every principle of law enforcement. He's not a security officer. He's a violent offender who used a weapon on a child. And Michelle Bradford enabled it by giving her husband tactical gear and fake authority, then defending his violence when residents tried to seek justice. The media explosion was immediate. National coverage on every network. Child safety organizations demanding HOA reform. Parents across America sharing the story. And the detail that made it unstoppable. Prosecutor's toddler tased by HOA security. Father who wrote state's use of force manual says it's felony assault. Derek Bradford had attacked the daughter of a prosecutor whose father commanded SWAT and literally wrote the book on appropriate force. Michelle's attorney tried damage control. Released statement. Captain Hayes' family relationship creates obvious bias. His testimony is emotional, not professional. My father's response in a follow-up interview. I've testified as expert witness in 43 cases. My professional analysis doesn't change based on personal connection. The facts change. And the facts show Derek Bradford deployed a taser on a 2-year-old who posed zero threat. That's criminal assault regardless of who the victim is. By evening, the story had evolved. SWAT commander whose granddaughter was tased provides expert testimony. Police training expert. HOA enforcers' actions violate every use of force standard. Phoenix Police Department released statement supporting my father's analysis. Captain Hayes' assessment reflects department policy. Taser deployment on young children is prohibited. This incident appears to be criminal assault, not legitimate security action, Detective Morrison called. Connor, the political pressure just evaporated. City council members are distancing themselves from Michelle. The mayor's office issued statement supporting full investigation. Your father's testimony changed everything. What about charges? DA's filing tomorrow. Aggravated assault with deadly weapon. Child endangerment. Weapons misconduct. Derek Bradford is going to be arrested. I hung up and checked social media. The combined story, prosecutor father, SWAT commander grandfather, toddler victim, had gone supernova. 8 million views, trending on every platform. Riverside Meadows enforcer had thought political connections would protect her husband. Thought her attorney's legal strategy would create doubt. She didn't know Derek had tased a prosecutor's daughter. Didn't know the girl's grandfather commanded SWAT and could destroy any use of force defense with expert testimony. The tyrant in heels was about to learn that tactical gear and fake badges don't survive contact with actual law enforcement expertise. And the whole world was watching her empire collapse. The national coverage exploded. By the next morning, Emma's story was on every major news network. Good Morning America, Today Show, cable news running it hourly. Protests started outside Riverside Meadows, parents holding signs, protect kids from HOA violence, fire Michelle Bradford, justice for Emma. News helicopters circling overhead, broadcasting live footage of the community under siege. My phone rang constantly, more victims coming forward, more stories of Derek's violence that Michelle had buried. Angela Morrison, mother of the teenager Derek tackled. I signed the NDA because I was terrified. Michelle threatened us with eviction, said we'd lose our home if we reported it. But watching your daughter's heart stop on camera, I can't stay silent anymore. Harold Peterson, the elderly man Derek shoved. I moved away because the board chair made it clear she'd destroy me if I talked. But I'm 73 years old. What's she going to do to me now that the whole country is watching? Sarah Wu, whose arm Derek grabbed. I have bruise photos, text messages from Michelle telling me to move past the incident or face administrative consequences. I want to testify. I want everyone to know what she enabled. Each new victim strengthened the pattern. Systematic violence covered up by the former HR director who'd given her husband tactical gear and fake authority. Channel 12's investigative piece aired that evening. 6 minutes of devastating journalism, security footage, victim interviews, my father's expert testimony, financial records showing Michelle's payoffs, emails where she'd ordered board members to support Derek's security decisions without question. The reporter's closing line. Michelle Bradford created a violent enforcement regime in Riverside Meadows. Her husband assaulted residents, and she covered it up with threats and money. Now one victim, a 2-year-old girl, has seizures from cardiac arrest, and the HOA president is still defending what she calls appropriate security operations. The public response was volcanic. Riverside Meadows HOA office was flooded with calls demanding Michelle's resignation. News vans camped outside her house, protesters chanting outside board meetings. Then the insurance company moved. Riverside Meadows liability carrier sent notice. Coverage is hereby canceled effective immediately. Taser deployment on minor child constitutes intentional harmful act excluded under policy terms. The association and individual board members are not covered for any claims arising from this incident. Michelle's attorney tried emergency damage control, called a press conference where he stood in front of cameras claiming Derek had been responding to escalating situation created by confrontational resident. The media destroyed him, reporter after reporter asking, "Are you claiming a 2-year-old with chalk created an escalating situation? Do you dispute the SWAT commander's expert testimony? How do you explain the 3 previous victims?" He had no answers. The press conference became viral clips of an attorney defending the indefensible. That afternoon, Detective Morrison called. "Connor, the DA is filing charges tomorrow morning. Aggravated assault with deadly weapon, child endangerment, weapons misconduct. Derek Bradford will be arrested at his home. Media can be there if you want. I want the whole world watching. We'll notify press, full perp walk, cameras rolling." I called my supervisor Tom at the DA's office. The political pressure? Gone. Evaporated. City council members are issuing statements condemning HOA violence. The mayor called personally to ensure we're prosecuting fully. Nobody wants to be seen protecting the guy who tased a toddler on camera. Tom paused. "Connor, this is the fastest I've ever seen political protection collapse. Your media strategy worked." That evening, Riverside Meadows held emergency board meeting. I attended with 200 other residents, dozens of reporters, and cameras everywhere. The board vice president stood at the podium, visibly shaken. In light of recent events and the criminal investigation into Derek Bradford, the board has voted to immediately terminate the community safety director position. All enforcement authority is suspended pending comprehensive review. Residents erupted in applause. Furthermore, the board is calling for President Michelle Bradford's resignation, given her role in creating and defending the security program that resulted in serious injury to a community child. The former HR director sat at the head table, watching her enforcement regime disintegrate. Watching residents she'd intimidated for 4 years demand her removal. Watching national news cameras document her fall. "Michelle, you need to resign," the vice president said. "Now. I acted to protect community standards. You gave your husband a taser and told him to enforce HOA rules. A 2-year-old almost died. Resign or we'll hold a recall vote tomorrow. Michelle stood, left without a word, cameras following her out. The tyrant in heels was done. Derek faced criminal prosecution tomorrow. Their attorney had no defense against video evidence and expert testimony. Insurance had abandoned them, and 8 million people were watching justice finally arrive. Derek Bradford's arrest happened at 6 a.m., with every news camera in Phoenix recording it. I stood across the street with Emma in my arms, watching police cars pull up to the Bradford house. Watching officers approach with arrest warrant. Watching Derek emerge in handcuffs, still wearing a tactical vest even at dawn, like he couldn't let go of the costume that had given him fake authority. Emma buried her face in my shoulder. Bad man. He can't hurt you anymore, baby. The police have him now. Real police, with real badges, arresting the fake cop who'd thought tactical gear made him legitimate. Detective Morrison read the charges loud enough for the media microphones to catch every word. Derek Bradford, you're under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and weapons misconduct. You have the right to remain silent. The same rights Derek had tried to recite over Emma's cardiac arrest, now being read to him. By 9 a.m., the courthouse was packed, 200 people waiting for the arraignment hearing, victim families, Riverside Meadows residents, media, child safety advocates, parents from across the city who'd watched the viral video and demanded justice. Emma stayed home with my father, but I was there to watch Derek answer for what he'd done. The prosecutor, my colleague Sarah Chen, assigned because I was too close to the case, stood before the judge with a file thick with evidence. Your Honor, the state charges Derek Bradford with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, a Class II felony. The defendant deployed a taser on a 2-year-old child, causing cardiac arrest, hospitalization, and ongoing seizures. We have security camera footage, medical records, expert testimony from the Phoenix SWAT commander, and a pattern of previous assaults the defendant committed while acting as unlicensed HOA security. Derek's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client was performing duties as HOA Community Safety Director when— There is no such position in Arizona law, Sarah interrupted. The defendant is not a licensed security guard. He's not law enforcement. He's a civilian who bought tactical gear online and patrolled a neighborhood with a taser he had no legal authority to carry or deploy. The judge reviewed the file, watched the security footage on the courtroom monitor. I saw her expression change as Emma's small body convulsed after the taser hit. Bail is set at $250,000. Defendant is prohibited from contact with the victim, her family, or any Riverside Meadows residents. Surrender all weapons. No security activities of any kind. As Derek was led away, I saw Michelle Bradford in the back of the courtroom, the former board president who'd resigned under pressure, but still thought she could avoid consequences. Sarah approached her after the hearing. Mrs. Bradford, we'd like to ask you some questions about your role in creating the security position that led to this assault. My attorney advised me not to speak. We have emails where you told Derek to use necessary force during enforcement. Financial records showing you paid off 3 previous assault victims. Testimony from witnesses you threatened into silence. Sarah's voice was prosecutor cold. You can talk to us voluntarily, or we'll subpoena you to testify at Derek's trial. Either way, your role in enabling this violence is going on the record. Michelle's composure finally shattered. I was protecting property, values. You were protecting your husband's violent enforcement, and a 2-year-old almost died. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Sarah held a press conference on the courthouse steps with dozens of cameras rolling. Today, Derek Bradford was arraigned on felony charges for tasing a 2-year-old child. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Security footage, medical records, expert testimony from law enforcement professionals. The state will prove that the defendant used a deadly weapon on a child who posed no threat, causing cardiac arrest and permanent injury. A reporter called out, "What about Michelle Bradford's role?" "We're investigating potential conspiracy charges. Michelle Bradford created the security position, gave her husband tactical authority, and covered up previous assaults. She's not just an enabler, she's potentially a co-conspirator." That evening, I received a package, returned via courier. Inside, Emma's pink and purple sidewalk chalk. The evidence Derek had confiscated, now returned because the criminal case had enough documentation without it. I brought it to Emma. "Look, baby, Mommy's chalk came back." She held it carefully. "Can I draw?" "Yes, tomorrow we'll draw on the driveway, and no one will stop you, ever." The tyrant in heels had resigned in disgrace. Derek faced 15 to 25 years in prison. The viral exposure had destroyed every defense, every political connection, every attempt to justify violence. And my daughter had her mother's chalk back. The simple gift that had started everything, now returned as justice, finally arrived. 6 months later, I stood on the same public sidewalk where Emma's heart had stopped. The concrete where I'd performed CPR on a 2-year-old. The spot where Derek Bradford's taser had turned my daughter's childhood into a medical emergency. But today was different. Today, Emma was drawing with sidewalk chalk, pink and purple, the colors her mother had chosen. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Derek convicted on all counts: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, weapons misconduct. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes, watched the security footage, heard my father's expert testimony, saw Emma's medical records documenting cardiac arrest and seizures. Sentencing came yesterday, 18 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for 15. The judge's words stayed with me. "Mr. Bradford, you deployed a taser on a 2-year-old child over sidewalk chalk. You stopped her heart. You caused permanent cardiac injury and neurological damage. You claimed this was appropriate security enforcement. The evidence shows it was criminal assault. This sentence reflects the severity of using deadly force on a vulnerable child." Michelle Bradford faced charges too: conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, operating unlicensed security force. Her trial started next month. But the former HOA president had already lost everything that mattered to her: power, reputation, the enforcement regime she'd built. Riverside Meadows had new leadership. The board fired all security personnel, banned any enforcement involving physical contact or weapons, required all violations be handled through written notices and legal channels only. The community pool had families again, kids playing without fear of tactical vested enforcers, parents not checking over their shoulders for Derek's patrols. Robert Chen's solar panels stayed. The new board apologized, rescinded all his fines, and updated the aesthetic guidelines to explicitly permit renewable energy installations. The 3 previous victims, Tony Martinelli, Harold Peterson, Sarah Wu, all received settlements from the HOA's insurance before coverage was canceled. More importantly, they received public acknowledgement that what happened to them was wrong, that Michelle's cover-ups and payoffs were corruption, not conflict resolution. Emma was healing. The seizures had decreased with seizures medication. Dr. Rodriguez was cautiously optimistic about long-term prognosis. The cardiac injury was permanent but manageable. The PTSD was improving with therapy. She still flinched sometimes when she saw uniforms, still had nightmares about the man in the tactical vest. But she was drawing again, playing outside, slowly reclaiming the childhood Derek had tried to take. "Daddy, look," she'd drawn flowers, pink and purple, just like Melissa used to draw. "That's beautiful, baby. Your mom would love it." "I miss Mommy." "I know, me too." The viral video that had started everything, 8 million views, was still circulating. Used by child safety advocates pushing for HOA reform legislation in 12 states. Featured in training materials teaching law enforcement about use of force on vulnerable populations. Referenced in court cases nationwide involving HOA overreach. My father's expert testimony had become mandatory viewing at police academies. This is what happens when untrained. Civilians are given tactical gear and fake authority. This is why law enforcement requires training, oversight, accountability. The media exposure strategy had worked. When political connections blocked traditional prosecution, public pressure made blocking it impossible. When Michelle's city council friends tried to protect Derek, national outrage forced them to step back. When the tyrant in heels tried to silence witnesses, viral videos gave them protection. Justice had come, not through the system I'd worked in for 8 years, but through millions of people watching and demanding accountability. Emma ran to show me her drawing, chalk dust on her fingers, the same pink and purple dust that had been there when Derek tased her. But now it was just chalk again, not evidence, not contraband, just a toddler's art supplies. "Can I draw here tomorrow too?" "Yes, every day if you want. No one's going to stop you." "Promise?" "I promise." Michelle Bradford had thought tactical gear and political connections made her husband legitimate. Had thought HOA enforcement could include deadly weapons. Had thought her city council friends would protect them from consequences. She'd never faced someone who understood that when institutions fail, public accountability takes over. That viral videos can't be buried. That 8 million witnesses demand justice louder than any political connection can suppress. Derek would spend the next 15 years in prison learning that fake badges and tactical vests don't make you a cop. That appropriate force on a 2-year-old is called attempted murder. That stopping a child's heart over chalk earns you a cell, not a security position. And Emma, my daughter, Melissa's legacy, the toddler who'd survived cardiac arrest, was finally safe to be a child again. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Because public accountability works, and no political connection can withstand millions of people demanding justice for a child.